All right, folks. Joel, are you there?
I'm here.
All right. Welcome to Chai Hack Night, everybody. This is episode 419 in month 7,000 of the pandemic, quarantine at home. Thanks, everyone, for joining us tonight. We know you could be anywhere in the internet tonight. Thanks for being here. Joel, you want to say hi?
Hi, everybody. We will hope you will hang out after the presentation for a live Q&A that's going to take place in the comments where you can leave your questions. Is it over here? I always want to do that thing where you're like, oh, like and whatever. Yeah, and we hope you also will hang around after the Q&A for a Zoom where we all get to hang out. And we have these things called breakout groups where we do cool stuff. So be sure and hang out for that.
Yep, you can see the agenda that we've got here. We're going to have an awesome presentation. It's going to start in a few minutes from Kim Creighton called Profit Without Oppression. It's going to be a really exciting talk. I've been looking forward to it for a while. But before we do that, we always like to do some announcements that we like to share with folks about Chai Hack Night, and then also some other things that are worth knowing. So you want to take this first announcement, Joel?
Announcement number one is the Slack. This is where communication happens for Shy Hack Night. If you would like to join our Slack for news and all kinds of other stuff, jobs, we have a water cooler. It's very exciting. It's slackme.shyhacknight.org. That's slackme.shyhacknight.org. Next.
All right, this is upcoming presentations. So we do this every week, every Tuesday. And we've got some great presentations lined up for you in the coming weeks. Next week, we're going to hear from the People's Budget, which is a presentation by a fellow that's part of the Chicago United for Equity, or CUE organization that we've heard them before. And then also we're going to, that same night, have a member meeting. So Chai Hack Night is a membership-based organization. We'll have more a little bit on that in a future slide. But if you are a member or interested in becoming a member, we'll be having a special meeting that night after the presentation. Remember how I said we meet every night? Well, we decided that we're just not going to meet on November 3rd because it's the election night. And I have no idea what I could possibly tell you or say that would be more interesting or helpful or useful than what you can get anywhere else. So we're just going to take a break, and I hope you do too, on that eventful night and have nothing going on Chai Hack Night related on 11/3. Then on the 10th, we're going to be back. Sid Harrell, who is a long-standing person in civic tech. She's been an amazing leader, doing a lot of work with Code for America and 18F. She just wrote a book, and it's called A Civic Technologist's Practical Guide. And we are going to be interviewing her and learning a little bit about that book and with the learnings that she's gathered over the years that went into it. So stay tuned for that. And we have a number of other presentations in December, but we'll tell you about those later.
I was going to be so clever and grab the book, but now I can't find it.
It's not in that closet.
Not in the closet. Become a Shy Hack Night member. As Derek said, we are a member-based organization. We have a member meeting coming up next time after the presentation. Yes, after the presentation. And it's not just for current members, it's for any prospective members. So if you're member curious and you want to learn more about our organization, this would be a good time to drop in. Being a member allows you to run for office on our board of directors. You can vote for changes in our bylaws, and you can make important decisions on what Shy Hack Night does. So if you would like to apply, check out that shyhacknight.org/membership/apply page and join today.
Yep. And just a reminder that member meeting is next week, not tonight. So it's, yeah. Cool. Next one, help desk. This is one we've been doing for a while. It's a sort of a somewhat new initiative. If you have any need in using tech or data, we decided to create a sort of clearinghouse space for you to ask those questions. You fill out a simple form, and then we'll match you with a volunteer or a set of volunteers that can help you with that issue. The idea is to help you get unstuck answer a question, sort of troubleshoot an issue and get you moving. The idea is also something that people can join. Anybody, if they're interested in being a volunteer, can join and be a volunteer. I think we have about 30 volunteers right now in our pool. So if you want to ask for help, or if you want to do help, then those are the links below, bit.ly/CHN help desk, and then same thing, bit.ly CHN help desk with a volunteer if you want to volunteer.
Vote. CHI-Hack Night 2020 Election Information Guide. It's on our website. It's the most recent blog post, and also you can get to it from bit.ly/CHN-2020-voting-info. We have a really good guide for all the stuff you need to know. As far as we know, who knows what's going to happen on this fateful election night, but you should check out our blog. Highly recommend it.
And it's Illinois focused, so we really try to cover all the bases for Illinois. Cool. So Get Cities. So about, I think 2 weeks ago, we had a presentation from Get, which is Gender Equity in Tech. They gave a great presentation, and they mentioned that they have a fellowship that was opening soon. Well, now it's open. So if you're interested in applying to be one of their 2021 fellows, there's a link at the bottom here. We'll also share this link and all the other links in Slack and on the live chat as well, so you can click through to those. But if you're interested in being one of their inaugural fellows, then please apply there.
As I mentioned before, we do a post-presentation Zoom call. Go to this link, bit.ly/CHN-remote-zoom, which we'll also put in the chat at 8 o'clock. And that's where we'll have our breakout groups. We have a Civic Tech 101 where you can learn about the organization if this is your first CHI-Hack Night. So yeah, join us on the post-event Zoom.
All right, I think that's it for our announcements. So we're ready for our feature presentation. But before I do, I just wanted to give a little bit of a preface to it. We've had conversations before at CHI-Hack Night, most recently the Actions Towards Racial Justice talk. And it was a great conversation with a bunch of folks, about 40 of us. It's talking about a topic that we're going to hear about from Kim in just a moment, being anti-racist, learning about equity, learning about a lot of these things that are really a challenge, not just in tech, but in society at large, in Chicago. And so I just want to give a preface that prepare to be uncomfortable. Please embrace being uncomfortable about this presentation, because there's no way we're going to make any progress if we don't step into that space. So without further ado, I'd like to give it up to Kim Creighton and her feature presentation. Take it away, Kim.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for having me. Can you see my slides?
Looks good.
Yeah.
All right. So, okay. So I've had to adjust because I am a high energy speaker, if people have seen me. So sitting in a chair doing this during a pandemic has been rather odd. So bear with me. But I am Kim Creighton, and I want to start with why I'm here. I am currently finishing up a doctorate in business administration, focusing on technology entrepreneurship. And my doctoral study is on basically organizational knowledge sharing. And so I go to Walden University, and one of the things that I love about Walden University, and I didn't understand that or even gleam it when I first started, but it is rooted in one of their foundations is social change. So all the research that comes out of Walden University has to be couched in social change. So this is working to better foster social change through research, practice, and education for motivated scholar practitioners. The reason I put this here because I am a scholar practitioner. I am not just an academic. I am a person who takes theory, research, and I take it into the real world and use it with my clients. I am a person who does not believe in just quantitative data. I believe in qualitative data helps explains, and validates based on lived experience, quantitative data. So I'm a mixed methods researcher. So give me a second. Oops, hold on. Okay. All right, I'm using two different screens. We are no longer creating widgets. And this is what people have to understand. We are no longer in an industrial economy. Business leadership must learn to operate in an information economy, but information alone has no inherent value. It's only information that is developed into knowledge that has value. And it's very important that you understand the difference between information and knowledge. Information is ubiquitous. You see it on the internet. Knowledge is what people take information, they take it in, they do something with it, and because of how they do it on their jobs or whatever, it becomes knowledge. And that is why we need to be hiring people for their lived experiences, because my lived experience turns my information into knowledge. It's going to be different than what Derek, how he processes information, or how Joel processes information. And so we need to be hiring people for their lived experiences. To that end, my goal is to democratize business school education so that business leaders anywhere, particularly from marginalized and vulnerable communities, can develop the skills and knowledge they need to build successful businesses. At the intersection of theory and application lies knowledge, creativity, innovation, and the opportunity to redefine global capitalist systems without white supremacy. So I'm an educator, so I always start with defining terms. So privilege is such a trigger word for so many folks, but it's just access. It is just about who gets to access certain things. So I don't know if you've ever seen these, National Geographic specials, but they'll frequently show these monkeys that are in Japan, and they're in these warm springs. And when they usually show this picture, it's usually just about how cute they are, and oh, look at them getting warm. But that's not the whole story. This is a matriarchal system. And so the ones that get to stay in the hot springs are the people, are the monkeys in the matriarchal family. All the other monkeys are standing on the outside trying to ingratiate themselves so that they can get into the warm springs, because they're freezing their butts off out there. So it's about access. Underrepresented is simply about numbers. You see a group of people, there's one woman, hence she is underrepresented. And you see a picture of and also in the picture, there's a Black man, and he's underrepresented. So she's underrepresented because of there are men. He's underrepresented because everybody else in this picture is white. That's different. Underrepresentation is different from marginalization. Marginalization is how groups of people are treated. So how Black, Indigenous, people of color, trans individuals, non-binary individuals, people with disability, ageism, how groups of people are treated is what marginalization is. So in this picture, there's a white woman, she is underrepresented. But as we know about who Nancy Pelosi is, she is not marginalized. She does not intersect at a marginalization. Because she benefits from the status quo. Diversity is simply about variety. And so I like to give this example. If you give me a four box crayons, Crayola crayons, there's not much I can do with, I think there's black, brown, blue, I don't know what's in the 4 box, but it's nothing. I'm not an artist. I'm not that creative. It's going to be a really ugly picture. But if you give me that 64 box of crayons with the sharpener in the back, it still can be an ugly picture, but it's going to be a colorful picture. It can be really creative because I can combine colors that I couldn't combine together to create my own colors. That is what diversity is. It is. And so if you look at it from a business perspective, diversity is only about recruitment. And this is what people mess up. Diversity is about recruitment. Who are you bringing in? Who are you aligning with? Who are you partnering with? How are you how is your marketing and sales targeting people? That is what diversity is. unlike inclusion, is about experience. And no one can tell someone else that they're having an inclusive experience. It is from my it's my lived experience. So you can do all the things you want in this company or in this community or at these events, and you do not get to say if someone is included or not. They tell you if they're included. And this is where we make our mistakes, in particularly in tech. We're doing it, we're great with inclusion and diversity. No, you're not, because inclusion, just like I said, diversity was about recruitment. Inclusion is about retention. How are you retaining these individuals? Are these individuals coming back to your events year in and year out? Are these individuals staying in your company, but not only just staying in your company, are they participating? Are they vocal? Are they saying something? Or do they feel, or have you demonstrated by your behavior that their voices aren't wanted or desired, and you just have them there for the recruitment part? That is what inclusion is. Inclusion is not about equality. We're not talking about equality. There is no way I, as a Black woman, have the same experience as a white man in tech or any industry. It is not about quotas. It is not about, okay, we need 12 Latinx, we need somebody, but if we can get 2 of those to have a disability, we can check those off. It's not anything about that. It's not about quotas. It is about equity. So let me give you an example of what I mean about equity. Let's say there's, in this pandemic, there are 2 families, and let's just use a real example. The US, they gave people a $1,200 check. In some communities, that $1,200 check was used to pay off bills. That check was used they just pocketed and put it in their savings. That check was used to buy somebody, maybe somebody was stuck somewhere and they couldn't get home, so you pay for that ticket. In other communities, that money had to be used for food, that money had to be used for rent, that money had to be used for childcare, that money had to be used for gas, that money had to be used for a whole bunch of things that $1,200 does not take care of. That is not equity. So this is where fundamentally our politics are inequitable. Just to give someone $1,200, there's so many, and this is why qualitative data matters. What can I do to ensure that every person in the United States is having the same lived experience, or a similar, let's put it this way, a similar lived experience with that $1,200? As I said before, inclusion is about experience. So let's talk about racism. Racism is race prejudice plus social and institutional power. Let me say that again. Racism is race prejudice plus systems and institutions and policies that fundamentally create a way that the race prejudice has power. All right. It's a system that advantages based on race. It's a system of oppression based on race. It is a white supremacist system. And when I say white supremacist, I mean whiteness is the default. When we talk about assimilation, when we talk about all the whiteness is the default. Everybody, when we talk about model minorities, when we're talking about, it is always, the goal is to get people to be more white. White beauty standards. Whiteness is brilliant, it's smart. This is why I say often when I'm calling out white dudes in tech, I call you mediocre and unremarkable, because there are 2 parts to this. White dudes, I need you to understand, you are the default. So not only, because I know people like to use the analogy, you play the game on easy. It's not just that you play the game on easy, that's one part. You play the game on easy and you have no competition. The barriers have been put in place to ensure that not only are you playing on easy, but you're playing by yourself. So this is why I call you unremarkable and mediocre, because you have not competed with people who've been told their whole lives that we have to give 110% just to get in the rooms. Racism is different from race prejudice, hatred, or discrimination. Racism involves one group having the power to carry out systemic discrimination through the institutional policies and practices of society, and by shaping the cultural beliefs and values that support those racist policies and practices. This is why I often use the term whiteness, because it is systematic. I need people to understand it's systemic. We also need to talk about Blackness, because when we talk about whiteness, one of the things when I say that you've never competed is because we've set up a system of anti-Blackness globally. Everywhere that there are darker people, people who will be considered Black, are treated worse than anybody who looks like the default of whiteness. And this includes, and this upsets a lot of people when I say white passing Jews. You make it harder for Black and brown Jews to exist because you deny their Blackness. You are the default. This also happens with white trans women when they come into Black and brown, lesbian, and LGBTQ spaces. They often center their whiteness. They want to talk about what makes them all the women, they're the same, instead of the diversity of having conversations about we're all women. Let's embrace what makes us different and advocate for that. So I've had several conversations with Black and brown lesbians who've welcomed white trans women into their spaces. And because white trans women don't have periods, can't have, don't have babies, have never had, don't have abortions, they don't want to talk about that stuff. But that is the lived experience of these Black and brown women. So hold on just a second. So the Council for Democratizing Education defines anti-Blackness as being a two-part formation that both voids Blackness of value while systematically marginalizing Black people and their issues. So the first form of anti-Blackness is overt racism. Beneath this anti-Black racism is the covert, structural, and systemic racism, which categorically predetermines socioeconomic status of Blacks in the US, and I put globally. The structure is held in place by anti-Black policies, institutions, and ideologies. We see this everywhere. And many of you can need to admit that you did not see it until you were in lockdown in a pandemic and you had no distractions and were forced to watch a police kill a man on camera. So there are overt racism. People also often think of just the Ku Klux Klan, Nazis. No, your overt racism in your organizations are policies and procedures that you have that fundamentally support white men to the exclusion and to the harm of Black and brown people in your institutions. The second form of anti-Blackness is the unethical disregard of anti-Black institutions and policies. This disregard is the product of class, race, and or gender privilege certain individuals experience due to anti-Black institutions and policies. This form of anti-Blackness is protected by the forms of covert racism. So I'm going to give you two examples, and one of them may piss people off because if you're a white liberal or right progressive, when I talk about Bernie Sanders, you get pissed off. I really don't care. I found Bernie Sanders to be very problematic when he was running because every issue he would never talk about race. He always talked about class. Everything, if it was a race thing, if it was a question specifically about Black people, he would turn it into a class issue. That is problematic because even in classes, Even when you talk about within Blackness, rich women, poor women, middle class women are all having horrible maternity mortality rates. So even in class, Blackness is the determinant. And if you can't talk about Blackness, then you are not anti-racist. And that was my whole issue with this campaign. We got rid of any candidate that was going to talk about racism before people even started voting. And I say the same thing about a Biden. Until very recently, he never talked about anti-racism. I was looking for anti-racist candidate because those things impact my life. So that is on a global, a more macro scale. On a micro scale, I want you to think about how challenging it is for particularly Black women to write an email to white folks. So let me tell you how this plays out. If I am your subordinate, I am your manager, and you have done something that I have to correct, the level of energy and time that I need to take to write an email to construct, that's what it is, construct the email so that your feelings don't get hurt, is beyond a waste of my time. It enforces this anti-Blackness, because what happens is, as soon as you get the email, you get into your feelings, and now we can't even talk about why I wrote the email. Now I have to deal with your feelings. Now we got to deal with white people's feelings. And this is why I'm no longer responsible for white people's feelings. You need to learn how to manage your feelings. And if that means you need to get therapy or whatever you need to do, that's fine. Do not dump how I feel or whatever on other Black people or other marginalized people in the space, particularly if they're calling you out. Your feelings are yours. They're your responsibility. You're adults. Deal with your feelings. So this is the business part about this. So products and services are not businesses. And this I see so much in tech. I know so many people use like the lean model canvas. That is about iterating a product or service. This is not about building a business. A business requires processes, procedures, and policies in place that allow you to learn from the information you're getting. That's why we have so much data and no one knows what to do with it. There's no structures around the data we're collecting. What are we going to do with it? How is it informing our choices? So what we have in tech is a whole bunch of products and services that had consumer buy-in. And so you create something, people start buying it, and then you're just running around trying to put some things in place because you don't have the structures in place to allow you to differentiate, innovate, and compete as a business. So you're creating, every time you hire somebody, you're starting the process over again. You don't have any structure there. Internal communication is a huge issue I see. If there's something written about it, people don't follow it. It's not communicated well. A business requires policies, procedures, and processes in place. You cannot manage what you cannot measure. And this is why also we lean too heavily on quantitative data, because we have a data point, but a data point does not tell a whole story. And also what I find is far too many marginalized entrepreneurs are creating jobs for themselves and rather than businesses. They want to create businesses. They think they're creating businesses, but what they're actually doing are creating just a job for themselves. There's not something that they can hand down to somebody. It's not something they can sell to somebody else. They are the business. They are the job. If they're not there, if they don't get to go to work, they're sick, if they're down with COVID, nothing happens. All too often, organizations fail, can't scale, and or become toxic because their leaders don't understand that growth requires processes that enable connectedness, innovation, and competitive advantage. Successful organizations are built on foundations that enable the leaders to turn information into knowledge in order to scale, evolve, and recover. And this is why we need to be hiring for lived experience. When we were in an industrial economy, you hired people to make widgets. You gave them a manual, which is explicit knowledge. That is knowledge that is easily documented. Hey, Bob, take the manual, learn the job, go sit on the assembly line, make the widget. That widget needs to look like every other widget because it needs to fit into 1,000 different things. That was the old economy. The new economy is the value of tacit knowledge. It is, how do I get employees, leadership, managers to share what they're learning as they in the commission of doing their jobs? What are they seeing? What are they hearing from customers in a way that allows leadership to be able to take that information, share it amongst people, scale it, and innovate and differentiate so they can compete. Tacit knowledge is king in an information economy. And this is why you need individuals. We're hiring people with lived experience. And I'm just going to go off on a tangent, right? Just a quick tangent, because I don't know if you saw the CEO of Coinbase, which is a cryptocurrency business, a few weeks ago put out this blog post saying that they were apolitical. They would no longer be talking about politics in the business and whatever. And there are people who who think this is great. This is not reality. My life is political. If you're hiring me for my lived experience, you cannot expect me to leave that at the door. You're hiring me for my lived experience to help you innovate, differentiate, and have competitive advantage. To expect me to leave that at the door is you're not only a disservice to me and harmful to me, but you're also not getting your money's worth. Why did you hire me then? There is no such thing as apolitical. And I'm going to tell you, only people who are the default believe there is. I live every day making political choices based on being a Black woman. Is it safe for me to wear, I have a t-shirt that says, "Not today, colonizer," which is a term that came out of the Black Panther movie. I have to make a choice when I wear that. Where am I going? Am I going somewhere that somebody's going to challenge me wearing that shirt? Not often do people who wear MAGA hats have that same conversation. I live in a state where people will drive with Confederate flags on their cars. They have gun rifles racks in their trucks. They don't think about they don't make those calculations every time they leave the house. So to tell me that I am now in an organization that is apolitical tells me that you are the default and you're okay with being the default, and that you're okay with potentially harming me. The ability of organizational leaders to successfully create and manage operations relies heavily on how well they are at developing these necessary processes. When leaders take the time to understand and operationalize their organization's functions, they avoid common barriers to success while being able to recover more quickly from unexpected events. So what I tell my clients all the time, what we're doing when you do processes, procedures, and policies, you're trying to operationalize the things that happen often. You hire, there should be, even if it's not often, I take that word back. It's something that is fundamental to operations. So if you hire, you have a procedure for hiring, how marketing talks to sales, how people go about claiming or requesting paternity leave. Those things need to be operationalized. Those things don't change really. You might have individual cases, but they're pretty broad and they stay the same. You want to put as much of those things down in something, make that explicit knowledge, make that as explicit, not create as many of those binders and manuals as you can, because inevitably there will come something out of the blue that you have not anticipated that needs to have all your full attention. So you're doing this, you're operationalizing the common things or the things that, make a business run effectively so that you have the bandwidth to deal with those outliers. And that's another thing. I'm gonna have another caveat here. We in tech don't like to deal with outliers. But let me tell you, when I talked about marginalization, when I showed you the definitions of what defines what is marginalized, that is where our lives are. Our lives are the outliers because we're not the default. And so if you're not planning for our experiences or what you consider the default, you are designing products and services that will harm us, not might, but will, in ways that you don't even see. Building a successful organization with fewer unintended consequences requires more than a great product or service. It requires leaders being able to give all stakeholders the experiences they want and the ability to manage the process. So I want to talk really quickly before I show you what the stakeholders are. What I mean by stakeholders. We currently have an economic system that values shareholders only. Right? This is why when I see the rhetoric from either side of the political spectrum talking about what they're going to do for, employees, and I always want to, again, that's a data point, but I want the qualitative data to understand what they're really talking about, because most of these, what do they call them? These campaign promises are a bunkus, a bullshit. It's just not real, because given the last election, don't care what you think about Trump. This is not about Trump. This is about the fact that he used as an example the Carrier air conditioning company. One of his campaign promises was that company was going to stay in the United States. They were not going to take those jobs to Mexico. He was able to delay it, but they eventually left because of shareholder value. Shareholders, CEOs, and board of directors are beholden to the shareholders legally, and their only real thing that they can advocate for or work towards is increasing shareholder value. So if shareholders, if there is an opportunity to move a company out so that they can decrease the cost of employees and making stuff, and they don't do it, shareholders can actually sue the board of directors and the CEO. So a lot of the promises that politicians and people are making don't make sense when you understand how our current capitalist system, when we focus on shareholder value only, works. I and others talk about stakeholder value. I talk about, let's think about a broader perspective of people who we need to think about. So we first of all need to think about those who work for us, because if those who work for us are feeling included and feeling safe and have psychological safety, are given all, and they're providing that tacit knowledge, so you as organizational leaders are able to differentiate and innovate and be competitive. That is the base. That's where we should start. But in this current environment, we always start with investors because we talk about shareholder value. So we start with the employee, and then it's like a rock in water, and you ripple out. Then we start looking at our partners, because as we see more increasingly, what we don't want to have is okay, we've been rocking and rolling with our employees. We have our core values. We have our policies, procedures, and processes in place. We have a calm company. People feel safe. People are able to work on projects that they care about. They're able to challenge each other respectfully, all these other things. And the last thing you want to do is partner with an organization or with someone who will come in and ruin all of that. And we're seeing that a lot more with something happens and a partner organization has to come back on Twitter or somebody will like, oh, no, we had nothing to do with that. And then once those things are, then you focus on that information from people who buy from you. What are they saying? How can we improve? What are their experiences? And then once all of those in place, who invests with you will get the money. They will get their investment. Going from a product to service focus to business model focus takes time, intention, and strategic effort. All are necessary in order to innovate, differentiate, and compete in the information age. Also, building stakeholder rather than shareholder focused organization is a proactive approach to addressing inclusion, diversity, safe spaces, and developing a harm reduction perspective. This is what we are so lacking in this space. We need to be thinking about harm reduction. And this is why you bring in people with different lived experiences. This is why this is a business imperative. When leaders create organizations around well-defined and tested core values that consider the needs of all stakeholders and have processes in place to monitor progress, they are less likely to discover at some point in the future that they've been nurturing an exclusionary environment with unintended consequences. So, the process for shifting to a product or service focused business focus to a business model focus. Step one. So I'm just going to take you through this process that I developed that I use with my clients when I first started working with them. It is just this because everybody wants to talk about, particularly if they already have a product or service that's making money. It's often hard to get them to slow down, and even if they don't have any processes, procedures, and policies in place, and they know they need it because they're failing miserably, they're causing harm, they're wasting money, they're wasting resources. It is a challenge to get people to slow down. So one thing I get them to do is imagine what the ideal stakeholder experience is like and write that in detail. What would you like when we go back to stakeholders? What do you want those people who work for you, what their experience to be like? What do you want those people who partner with you? What do you want their experience to be like? What do you want the people who buy from you the experience to be like? What do you want those who invest with you experience to be like? And you write that in detail because people don't think about that. So I just have people this is like a first step, just to start thinking about what you want that to be outside of your product or service. What do you want them to experience? And then you need to define that. You need to define your core values and then develop indicators to let you know that you've met that thing. So if you say that, so I had a client who one of her core values was beautiful things. And people think, oh, that's just so abstract. But for her, an indicator of success, how she turned that core value of beautiful things into indicator of success is how she constructs emails. How does she engage with her clients? So for me, I'm just, that's not one of my core values. So how I construct the email, I'm just trying to get information out and with clarity. For her, it matters the words she chooses, how she addresses the salutation, all of that matters. If she had a brick and mortar spot and someone had to use the bathroom, the toilet paper in there matters to her. The soap that they use matters to her because that is about beautiful things. And she can, that's an indicator of success that she can measure. And then you apply those measurements. You apply measurements to the indicators of success. So if in the last example of emails, how many responses, positive responses she gets to those emails. If people are saying it would be great that's a quantitative data point, but a qualitative data point if people say, wow, I loved reading this email. This was amazing. It was so clear. That is a qualitative data point that she can use that measures the indicator. And then you test the indicators with stakeholders. And then you evaluate the measurements to determine if the benchmarks were met. So you set the indicators, you set the benchmarks, and you say, let's say we want to have 100 new clients by the end of Q1. And then you look at that, that's a benchmark. And then you say, did we meet that benchmark? If not, so if we met that benchmark is a quantitative data point. What you need to know qualitatively, which will help, is why didn't we meet it? What are we missing? Did we drop those qualitative things help you in understanding why you met or did not meet those benchmarks. That benchmark is only a quantitative data point. And then once you iterated it and it works pretty good because it's all an iterative process, this is where you standardize those things. And this is where you create manuals, and this is where you share the information. This is where you get that information out. Important considerations. Core values should inform all organizational decisions. So once you've developed your core values, I used it before, the example of beautiful things, everything this person does in her business has to be looked through the lens of beautiful things. So it's not something you just splash on a wall. This is the company's core values. You don't just put it in your email bio or it's active. It's something that you go back to often. Remember that this is an ongoing process. The decisions that are the result of this process should not be seen as immutable or rigid. It is fluid. Organizational leaders should plan to review whether stakeholder factors have changed at least twice a year. This will enable them to proactively anticipate shifting needs and plan accordingly. This helps you this really helps you differentiate and be competitive. So now we're at the capitalism part. People get so upset about capitalism. People say capitalism is evil, all these things about capitalism. Capitalism is simply this. It's an economic or political system in which countries' trade and industry are controlled by private owners for profit rather than by the state. That is a very benign statement. Capitalism is a theory. It was a theory. It was an idea. How we've implemented it globally is the problem, is what's problematic. We have rooted the foundation of our capitalist system globally is rooted in white supremacy. If we want to specifically talk about the US, capitalism, people who were thinking about capitalist ideas, and they weren't even calling it capitalism at the time. When you think about Adam Smith and other people who were thinking about capitalism, Adam Smith wrote The Wealth of Nations in 1776. That date should tell you something, because that was the date that the US the year the US got its independence. So Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, all of these people knew about Adam Smith. Then he actually wrote before that a book called the Moral Sentiment. I don't think that's the exact name, but it's Moral Sentiment or something like that. So Adam Smith was actually thinking about morals while he was thinking about economic systems. When the founding fathers adopted an economic system, they rooted it in white supremacy to justify the annihilation of indigenous people and the enslavement of Africans. That is what our economic system, which we have exported around the world, is rooted in. That is why this system is harmful. It is nothing wrong with this definition. There's nothing wrong with profit. Financial gain, especially the difference between the amount earned and the amount spent buying, operating, and producing something. Oppression, prolonged, cruel, and unjust treatment or control. I want to talk about profit without oppression, because when I talk about profit without oppression, I don't need to know your political ideology. I don't need to know your religious beliefs. I don't need to know how you were raised. I don't need to know any of that. All I need to know is have a conversation with you and say, would you like to profit without oppression? That's it. If we can get there, then we are talking about fundamentally changing what capitalism looks like and how it functions globally. Instead of mixing capitalism with social justice, which is problematic. So what we have right now is our capitalist system is rooted in white supremacy, and we're trying to sit social justice on top of that. That does not work well. What about shifting the lens to capitalism as social justice? So democratizing business school education is a social justice and anti-racist movement. Let's move it from elite campuses to the main street. Let's turn business research into action. It should not, how we build businesses that scale, that can be passed down, can be sold, that can really impact generational wealth should not be the domain of the powerful and the privileged. Establish harm reduction as an organizational imperative. We do an awful job of this. And every day I am tweeting just a reminder, and it's not hyperbole to me, that Mark Zuckerberg is the most dangerous, mediocre, unremarkable white dude in tech. How he runs Facebook and what he believes from his limited perspective causes harm and doesn't cause harm has had so much research, quantitative and qualitative, that he's incorrect. And the fact that he still operates as if he knows it all, or that his organization, with the organization leaders they have, can solve the world's problems, is beyond problematic. So one of the ways that I make decisions is I use the guiding principles that I developed, and this is something I'm hoping that more people in tech adopt. And they go from the top down. So let me read it to you. And I actually need to update this slide because we've updated the guiding principles. So tech is not neutral, nor is it apolitical, period. We need to stop that. Once we get that understanding, then the other principles make sense. We have to first understand that tech is created by people. I don't care if it's AI, machine learning, some person created it. There is no human that does not have bias. So there is no neutrality in tech, and there is no apolitical stance in tech. The fact that people, again, say that it's apolitical means that they understand and they're benefiting from that whiteness, and particularly white men are the default. Intention without strategy is chaos. So once you understand that tech is not neutral, then you can understand that intention without strategy is chaos. We're talking about impact. There's so many people in tech who have intentions and cause harm and use that as an excuse when they screw up. Well, that was my intention. I don't care about your intention. It's the impact. Lack of inclusion is a risk, and I have added increasingly a crisis management issue. And we see this. We see increasingly how companies, some employees' off work behavior is impacting a company's ability to conduct business. And so we need to be, and risk management is proactive, crisis management is reactive. And above all else, the point that we need to get to is we have to prioritize the most vulnerable. If we're talking about profit without oppression, prioritizing the most vulnerable is it. That is the goal. So that's the presentation, and thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Really appreciate that. We are close to 8 our time, but I think we have time for maybe one question. So we got a couple from the live chat. Let's see here real quick. I think.
Should I still be sharing my screen or no?
Actually, you can stop sharing. That's great.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think, one question that actually I had, I think, looking at the ones we wrote down. Can you share, you talked a lot about structures that need to be put in place to make successful organizations. Can you share examples of organizations you think are structured to be successful in the ways you've defined?
None. I'm going to be honest, none. I'm not joking. There has been such a default to, after George Floyd, I got so many questions. People like, oh, we want to be anti-racist. I was like, when did y'all learn that word? There are no, that I know of, anti-racist companies that are fundamentally focused on prioritizing the most vulnerable and reducing harm. I don't know any. I'm helping companies get there. And so one of my clients is Tito, which is the company that's in Dublin that had a thriving ticketing platform before the pandemic, and now they shifted to a platform called Vito. I work with them weekly. I've worked with, I've had W3C to reach out to me. I've had DuckDuckGo to reach out to me. I've had, it was a Scrum association reach out to me. So there are people reaching out. One of the things is people don't really understand what they're saying or think what they're getting into. And most people aren't ready to do this work. They just really aren't. This work is very uncomfortable for white folks. And it's possible. And this is why one of the things I'm focusing on more now, I've been running #CauseAScene for over 2 years. And so my philosophy as an educator is stop doing that. This is why we're going to stop doing that. And this is what we're going to do instead. I'm sick of doing the first two things because that leaves me dealing with kindergartners. Now I'm creating businesses that are examples, models of how to do this. This is why I tweet so much. This is why I write so much. This is why I do all these things. This is why I'm here to scale this knowledge. So there are people who are interested, but I personally don't know any company in tech that's doing this. The default in tech is that we are apolitical, that conservative voices are being silenced. And let me address that. They're not being silenced. What's happening is that with more marginalized people coming in, we have voices and we're just stating things that we've been too quiet to state before. Stating our views or challenging conservative views in businesses have caused us to lose our jobs. Have silenced us. So now we are emboldened. We have a voice. And so we're not shutting up. So it's not that conservative views are being silenced. They're just not the only views that are being heard. So until we can get, like, one of my people person I really need to be out of tech, I want him to be obsolete, is Uncle Bob. I need him gone. Gone. He's problematic, beyond problematic.
Right. Well, thanks for answering that question. And thanks for your time. We are a little bit over, so I think we do have to wrap it up.
All right.
But thank you again. And I think if you want to stick around for the post live stream, we'd definitely be happy to carry the conversation on there. Joel, I think, is there anything else we need to do before we sign off?
I will. Josh, can you throw up that link to the post live stream again for everybody, or just put it in the chat there? That would be great. That is bit.ly/ help me out.
CHN-remote-zoom. Yeah, we'll share a link to it in the live chat, and then we'll also post it in Slack. Well, I think that's a wrap for us tonight. So thanks again, everybody. Thanks again to Kim for presenting. And I think the last thing for us to do is to say, go forth and